I'm standing in a fairy ring of trees, um, thinking about the magic of this reality. Part of the magic of this reality is that there are energies everywhere. Trickster energies, good and bad, are everywhere. And we see this in our folklore and mythologies and what they call fairy tales, which could be really stories of this reality long ago before all this overlay of modernity and materialism, when people lived closer to the earth, and every culture at its root was focused on the elements, earth, air, water, fire, to support the to support them and to protect them. And there was a relationship, a reciprocity with these elements and an honoring of these elements um, that is common in all cultures. I challenge, anyone who knows one that didn't have that, please bring it to my attention. But so far, what I find is that every culture had this reverence. And because we live in this trickster reality, the elements become allies and benevolent beings to connect with where we're out in the forest. If we have a relationship with the forest, the nature spirits, we can call on them to protect us while we're in the forest. Um, and, just the honoring and the asking, can I enter can I enter these waters when I go in a river or the sea? When I surfed in Hawaii, I was also a dancer and devoted practitioner of the hula arts, and it is really deep, and it taught me to chant and ask permission before I go do anything or take anything from nature. And that is such a good lesson because everything's alive, everything has energy, and there's a lot of just trickster energy here. It's crazy. And I think we forget because of all the distractions, but it still is prevalent here, even though it's not like the old Irish folk tales or the story of Hi'iaka Ikapolio Pele, her journey through the islands. Oh my God, so many tricksters. She was just, handling and setting boundaries with, they were trying to take her out too. So it was just really interesting. And it's metaphoric for the reality, the energies we're running into every day. And I think about children because I had a dramatic healing effect to an hour of work with a 3-year-old, which I do remotely with a photo because we are fractals and I can get all your information from the body, your systems, through a photo. That's why, some of these elders don't want to be photographed. You can actually, do things with that. So it's a whole thing to think about. So I did a clearing on her system for, like the major systems, the nerves, the lymph, the circulation. These are 3 major systems that run throughout the body. And I worked on maybe a couple other things. And she no longer has night terrors. And it's continued. She's continued to be clear of night terrors. And so I think about, well, what is the cause? You know, And it really is just disturbed energies. Maybe it was from a C-section birth. We can't help the way we come into the world, but we can change the energy. So I also have been working with a woman who had childhood surgeries. Childhood surgeries also, there's an energy that can come in when you are under an anesthesia. There is an energy that can come in, and it'll kind of, even though you recover physically from the thing, there sometimes can be residues of this energy if you don't clear it. And then the longer it's with you, the harder it is to clear. And it kind of just hangs out in your system. And she's done a lot of work to, be in good health. And she's had, a lot of health crises. And she's feeling amazing. We've done a few sessions, and she is like having a religious experience, is what she calls it, with her body. Because we can do all the therapy, all the talking, but if you don't clear it from the body, and this alchemy of biogeometry allows you to really use the energies of alchemy, which are shape, color, angle, which is color, angle is light, color, number, that's another one, and sound. Everybody knows about the sound. And by the way, if you're doing sound healing in a space that isn't necessarily high vibes or good vibes, you better have a sacred container, because people are going to start resonating with whatever those energies are. So be aware when you go to sound healings, are they creating the sacred container for this ceremony? Because you may end up resonating with something that you don't want to. So just a little sound side note. And the sacred container is the elements, your relationship with the elements. If you're developed a good relationship, you will feel them surround whatever sacred space you're creating. And if you don't, you will also feel the intrusion of energies that aren't good. So we have to be aware. So much awareness, so much like paying attention. Anyways, so this woman's having a whole experience shifting the energy, and she was kind of just she's done all the things, but just needed to clear it from the system. So I worked on the lymph, and I worked on the circulation and the heart and the liver, and that got, and the nerves, and that got her to a place of like feeling this good feeling, which you should be feeling in your body. But, our parents don't know how to protect us. Unfortunately, we're not, we don't understand spiritual hygiene in a lot of ways. We can learn about it. And certain children, this is where it gets into the chart, the astrology charts and the energies you're running. Some children are more prone to these energies coming in than others because they're sensitive to it. My parents, they didn't understand when I was having night terrors and all kinds of torture happening to me in my sleep, screaming bloody murder in my sleep. They didn't understand what to do. It was the 70s. It took me to the doctor. They were like, oh, her brain's growing faster than her skull. They told my dad that, Did it change anything? No. So, and it did get worse for a while, and it wasn't until I started doing work on myself and clearing energy in my late 20s, early 30s, and I was living in a place on a farm where there wasn't any electricity around me. So it was super high vibrational and clear thinking, and I chased this thing away. But that had been with me for many, many years. And it manipulated my friendships as a child and my behavior. and was around me was very much a trickster energy. So, when we tune into this, we can change it and book a session with me if your child is having night terrors or you've had surgeries or things like that. You just don't fully feel yourself. Well, it could just be energies that need to be gotten rid of. And how you do it is you change the energy of your system through the resonance of shapes. For example, if there's this disturbance in the spine, I find the right shapes for the spine, change the energy through the law of resonance, and then you now are resonating on a different frequency. So it's what you do when you change the system and you start getting rid of disturbances in the body, you actually, those energies don't align anymore because like attracts like in this reality. So if you're, vibing on these levels and then you change that, well, they don't feel comfortable in these higher frequencies and these centered energies. And what it does is it raises it to a higher vibration, but it also centers your energy. So then you feel more at like, I know what's going on. I feel my boundaries. Some of us in our charts have a harder time with boundaries, and that's all kinds of boundaries and the ethereal and all that. So there's just a really interesting 2 healing stories that, the little girl, I just feel so good for that because it's just, no one should have to, as a child, have to deal with nightmares. It's not a natural part of going through stages, actually. If your child's being traumatized, it's a natural response. But if your child is, being fully taken care of in a lot of ways, but still has these nightmares, well, there's something going on. There's energies around. There's energies in the house. There's energies on the land that you can change. So look into my offerings. I offer a 20-minute consult to see if this work is right and if I can help. And then I have sessions, I have packages, all that stuff on my website. Check it out because it doesn't have to be even over, we don't even have to think about it that much. In fact, giving these energies your thoughts is not a good idea. So we kind of like, the way I treat energies when they come around me is like, I see you, but I'm not really going to pay attention fully to, I don't want to know what it is. I don't want to know, but I just know you're around and you've got to go. And setting boundaries. And when we're clear enough in our bodies, we can do that. It's not, it becomes just a part of living on this earth plane that is a sea of energy lines. We've got all kinds of energy lines mixing with electricity. Electricity is actually not great for us. So, there's a whole thing going on here in the subtle energy. So in the subconscious. And yeah, it's good to check in with like who or what is around you because it's important to be clear and to be discerning, especially with all this, social engineering, mind control, all that stuff. It's all adds up. The health psyops. Jesus, there's so much stuff. So it's good to be clear. It's good to be centered in your center.